Action Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke. Joining us once again is Tony DiZinno. A wonderful weekend in Elkhart Lake, American Le Mans Series sports car racing at its best. Hot and steamy, but it was a wild weekend, wasn't it?
It was a great weekend of IMSA sports car, endurance sports car racing up in Elkhart Lake, my friend. A little hot, a little humid, not just on the track, but obviously the temps were a bit more than normal. We had a little bit of everything this weekend as I kind of surveyed the paddock, caught up with everybody, went around the track, saw a lot of stuff happen, and it was a good time. And I had my dad along for the ride, which was fun. He has not been to Road America in well over a decade, so it was quite a reunion.
Well, this is interesting. So I'm kind of curious to what he thought of all the improvements. Every year they do an update. So somebody not being there for 10 years, I'm kind of curious what he thought of the upgrades at the facility.
Yeah, so we've been used to kind of the methodical stuff, but I mean, for background, he'd first gone to the IndyCar and sports car races there in the 80s. So he only kind of has that as a reference point. And the last time he and I were there was I think an ALMS weekend in 08 or 09, one of those 2 years. And to see his reaction to just the cart paths and the new seating areas and the new gift shop and the new victory lane and just name whatever other improvement that's happened. And obviously this year is going to be different because next year now you've got the repave coming. So it's like this is the last year of the current track surface. I was blown away. I mean, I couldn't get over how much he was just really soaking up all the newness. He's like, yeah, I know the track, but I don't remember everything else. And it was just, we were able to share a golf cart with a friend of ours during the weekend. And that was clutch because there's no way to get around the track without that, to say the least.
I mean, it really is
high on impossible.
Just by happenstance, I was flipping through YouTube last night, and I saw the 1963 Road America 500, which, in my opinion, is one of the probably 10 most iconic sports car races of all time, for a variety of reasons. Notable for not only the cars but the drivers that participated. Penske, and you had all your top name drivers that were running, and you had a drivers championship, a manufacturers championship, and you had this little Porsche driven by the local guys, Bill Wiestoff and Augie Pabst, who shocked the world and beat the Cobras and everything. And it's just such an iconic racetrack, but it's fun. They have some of the aerial shots they were showing, and you could definitely see where the plots of land were from where the tree lines were in that. It's really interesting. And they show a shot of the cars going down the straight into turn 5, and there's trees all the way into turn 5 on both sides and going up the hill. I mean, that was still all extremely wooded. And then if they do a pullback shot, you could see how limited the viewing was. And my first year there was 83 for the Bud 500, and just back then, I mean, that back area wasn't open up. And I'm kind of interested in hear what your dad thought of that cart path, because I think that cart path is one of the most significant upgrades they did, especially for somebody who may have not been to Road America before, but for those who never were able to experience that cart path going down past in through the kink in the Canada corner, where you really truly get to see the speed of the cars there. It must have been really wild.
Yeah, it's a game changer. You're seeing things, you're really still super close. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, it's not only there, but you're maybe 40, 50 feet from the track. I mean, you're very close, even if you're a little elevated as you're kind of going down the back straight. And because you're usually, I mean, the way we tend to go is we go kind of northbound, Canada corner, turn left. And so you're paralleling on driver's right as the guys are going into it. And the speed and seeing the braking points, that's probably the craziest bit, because you're going from 160, 170 plus down to, probably 75, 80 in that corner, I would say. The turn 5 is the slowest bit on the track at 50, 60 miles an hour. But I mean, the cart path, you're paralleling it, you go up into the carousel, the back section 6 and 7, the flow Hurried Downs, that whole area, Kettle Bottoms. I always forget which part is which, but yeah, it was great, and it was easy to get confused because like there's both outside and inside of the track, and so like I'm relaying to him, it's like, hey, we're going inside of here. It's like, no, we're outside, right? It's like, so it was kind of a funny back and forth as we were kind of figuring out where to go. To the tree point on shade, with it being as hot as it was on Saturday, really the most shady spot was actually the outside of turn 6, so kind of driver's right as you're making the left-hander, you go up the Corvette bridge, and that was packed because you've got a lot of people nestled in there. It's funny how, talking about the improvements, a lot of places have either a video board or a mic set or kind of, speaker, whatever. I mean, there's a ton of bathrooms too. I mean, there's no porta pots. It's all bathrooms. It's all facilities. So that's remarkable. But if you have a video board, you don't necessarily have sound. If you have sound, you don't necessarily have a video board. So trying to follow a 4-hour race with varying strategies, not to say that there's more improvements needed, because obviously there's been a ton of them, but it's really interesting. It's really cool for me because, like, usually I'm in a media center, and to just be out trackside taking in and almost like kind of dreaming or imagining what the situation is and kind of figuring it out on the fly. Same with him as a co-pilot. It was really fun and to happen in real time.
Well, a pretty impressive win for Felipe Albuquerque and Ricky Taylor and the number 10 car. They were faster in the beginning, and they were able to overcome some obstacles in the way.
It's such a weird race, and I mean, it was good to see that. A lot of times you'll be the fastest car on a weekend. You won't necessarily get the win for various circumstances, and so we're on pre-grid and it's drizzling a little bit. It's kind of that annoying spittle, like it's enough to be consistent, but not enough to force a change in tires. And there was some scrambling on the grid as guys were like, do we start on rain tires? Do we start on slicks? If you have to start on slicks, you have to start on your qualifying tires. Anyway, Felipe Albuquerque put down this ridiculously fast lap in qualifying. He was over a second quicker than the field. It got whittled down to, I don't know, 6-7 tenths by the end of it, but it was a number that you see that pop, we were like, whoa. And then when it started raining heavier, the number 5 Cadillac, which is a longtime sparring partner of the 10 through various eras, they went on rains and they made up, like, they got a minute lead on the field. They were lapping up to 7th, 8th place overall. So the 10 car was all the way back. And then it switched again. There was I think the last pit stop sequence, the 10 jumped the Cadillacs, but then fell in second behind the Shank car, the other Acura. So Albuquerque and Ollie Jarvis in this just great battle, and they're knifing through the GT traffic. I mean, the moves you have to make, and actually seeing it trackside when you're going outside here, inside here, you don't know which way they're going. You're hoping that the drivers are consistent enough to not move either way. So they get out of 7. Albuquerque, I think, goes to the outside of 7, which gives him the inside of 8. And he's clear, but it's like a 3-wide moment. And he uses another car, another BMW. He picks the other Acura back, and he's just like gained this whole amount of time. Like, you're going outside of 7, outside of the carousel, where you are like millimeters from dropping your left rear tire off the track. I mean, I only have jokingly said he was from another planet. I'm not sure he's of this planet because of both the speed and the decisiveness in traffic. I mean, a lot of guys, Rossi, Ricky Taylor, have said that when he's in the zone, he's damn near unbeatable. And that's more, well, that could have been more true, especially than Jarvis trying to catch up, makes a mistake, writes off the car at the kink and keeps going, because who does that?
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, especially during the IMSA weekends, we've had some incredible accidents. If you don't believe us, YouTube it. They're out there. I mean, cars that would get into trouble there, they would have a big moment. But I guess it's the best outcome from a bad situation for somebody to put himself in that position, but be able to limp home in 4th on 4 wheels with a tire going down. I think they were down to 7 pounds. I think at the end of the race, they were monitoring it as he was going around in the last lap.
Knocked the whole right front, nose assembly, what have you. It was just like he hit the wall, and it was interesting between the Michelin Pilot Challenge race on Saturday, the 4-hour race, and then this one. We lost count. There were like 6 or 7 really, really big accidents.
Yeah.
And for this one to not only happen, but keep going. And it was at a point late enough in the race where the caution laps do take so long. So you really only had to limp, a lap and a half, 2 laps, I think. it was quite remarkable. If they do win the championship, I think they're about 20, 19 or 20 points back now. They can look to finishing fourth instead of last as a key thing that'll be able to do it. So yeah, remarkable rigidity for a car to have that hard an impact, but not get destroyed to the level of some of the other ones that hit concrete at that part of the track. It ain't usually something you recover from.
No, it's very true. A couple of things, a couple of notes I took down. There was early, I think it was early in the race, the BMW stalled in turn 8. It's the old, oh, my car has stalled. Oh no. Oh, look at that, a caution flag. It somehow starts, but then I was wondering if you had any information on this. There wasn't a caution. They're back green again. Do we know what happened there?
Again, it was a little hard to follow. Just as we were kind of going around the track, we were at parts of outside of the carousel kink, weren't necessarily in 8 too much, but there were a couple long yellows where when there were yellows, it was really weird. And one of the BMWs I know had an issue really pretty much off the start. I think the Rahal BMW was in the pits within the first lap or two. They had a bit of a nightmare race. I didn't see what happened with the other Turner Paul Miller ones. I know there was a couple P2 and P3 incidents where one of the P2 guys spun out, tried to restart, and then he spun into the gravel. So that was stupid. And then the P3 car caution was when the JDC car, the 5 car that had the wets when everyone else was on slicks and made up all the time. Well, they ran a second car this weekend, which they haven't done all season. And the gentleman driver in that car managed to loop it, drop debris in Canada corner, and actually kill their primary car when they had it. So if not the BMW, there was definitely, some of the lesser class cars are lesser class cars for a reason, I think is a diplomatic way of phrasing it. So
right. Well, it's interesting. I hope that, it is frustrating, from not only competitors' point of view, but the officials' point of view, because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It could have been coincidence, but I mean, when you saw it, you're like, oh wait, oh, caution, and then I mean, just like when the caution came, oh, it lights up, and we've seen that so many times in other races and other series too, for that matter. And it'd be, I always say, they give penalties for the most inane stuff sometimes, what call track limits, pit road stuff, and all of that. And I'm one guy who's against more rules, but that is something that, maybe do something, I don't know, but I'm sure it's been discussed, but how you police it's pretty tough.
Race control is in a, generally speaking, very unappreciated position, a very difficult position, but sometimes while trying to do what you think is the right thing, you wind up creating more problems if it is a situation, particularly at a track like Road America, where if a caution comes out and you have to do another 4 miles under caution that you weren't anticipating, like if you're low on fuel or something, that gets problematic quick. I know that's been a big issue in IndyCar this year, kind of the inconsistency of when yellows fly based on incidents, and sometimes they allow a sequence to happen, sometimes they don't. I think any series, all they want from race control is consistency, whether it's, they just want to know what it is one way or another. If a yellow comes out at the wrong time, you're always playing catch up. That's just not correct.
And the other one, I don't know if you saw this, but the Stephen Thomas in the 11, I think it was a P3 or P2 or P3 car. Yeah, I went turn 8.
I think that was it. Yeah, we did see that. Yes.
It was embarrassing. I mean,
the funny thing about him is he's a fairly new gentleman driver. He's only been doing this 3 or 4 years, very fast. I mean, he's given Ben Keating, who's kind of pretty much the gold standard of gentleman drivers right now. He's given him a run for his money. He's very quick, but he still makes, occasionally there's still those little oopsies to just tricky conditions. I get it, but man, you don't want to be that guy.
That was embarrassing. Well, one other thing I wanted to mention with yesterday, with the rain and that, it was a spectacular show. Well, actually, I was going to mention about a P2 with Ryan Dalziel with Air Motorsports with them winning. Impressive for him. I'm curious, how many people you think remember him in Champ Car? I'm sure some of the hardcore, but I'm wondering, like, younger fans have only been maybe following the sport for 10 years. Do they know Ryan Dalziel was like the hot ticket there for a while? I mean, I'm happy the guy's still being, able to make a living in racing. That's impressive, especially, these days where it's not the easiest thing to do. But God bless him for winning and being able to drive for a living still at his age. He's pushing by early 40s, right?
I think he's pushing 40. I mean, it's me, I'm a nerd, so of course I remember his open wheel days in Atlantic Champ Car. But I mean, he had a season, I think 2012. He was probably the best sports car driver in the world that year. I mean, I know he'd almost won the Rolex, they won Le Mans, they did this, like, him and Star Works Motorsport had this just dynamic season. But he's, post the Patron Extreme Speed era, has kind of been in this, like, working actor type role where, he's just kind of getting a lot of P2 and GT rides, not necessarily the top class, but he's keeps scrapping, keeps fighting. And he's still got plenty of life left in him. So, the P2, to their credit, the P2 and P3 classes do have some really good pros. Like Montoya is in that class, DL's in that class. This Louis Delatraz is a name to the kid he beat, is a name to watch out for in the future. I think he'll be in a top flight car sooner rather than later. There are guys that are either on the way up or kind of on the way down that find this, like, happy medium in these P2, P3 classes. And that can be entertaining because sometimes not every race is going to have the best overall battle or best GT battle. You get one of these other classes that shows strong, and you get a good win battle. It's just, I think the challenge for those classes is they don't really have the manufacturer support behind them. So it's harder to get that TV time, that, that media interest, that buy-in. It's almost exclusively driver and team based because you don't have the manufacturer support trying to funnel them.
Well, another guy I was happy for from the weekend is Kenton Koch. And just, for listeners who may not know, I got to know Kenton about 5, 6, 7 years ago when he was coming up through the Michelin series and was winning scholarship after scholarship, working his way up the ladder there. We shared a lake house a few years ago. And here's a kid who is, I mean, he's the epitome of the young American driver. Unfortunately, probably too tall to run an open wheel. He's about 6'3" plus, but I mean, a hell of a good driver. Fortunately, because he doesn't bring a big checkbook, doesn't have a lot of, the big rides. Whatever he's driven, he's won it. In P3, he won this weekend at the IMSA Pilot Michelin Challenge 240. He's running the 56 car, Mercedes, and just kicked ass. Went through the field twice and won, and that might be his last, run in that car for the year. So, which would be sad because I think that's his third win of the year. If I recall. So.
Yeah, he third win for that car, second for him and Eric Foss, his co-driver. Eric's been battling through some injuries throughout the season, and their primary co-driver, Jeff Mosing, was actually back at the track. I was able to bump into all three in victory lane after the race on Saturday. And you're right with Kenton. I mean, he's another, I know I used the term scrappy earlier, but he's kind of consistent in that vibe. Doesn't always get the right opportunities, and it's not for a talent issue at all. He's got plenty of that. He's always had really, really good head on his shoulders. I mean, I met him, I think I was the first media person he ever met, like, when he was doing MX5 and Skip Barber stuff about 10 or 11 years ago. Just always has performed, really takes advantage of opportunities, and is still young enough to where I think he's only mid to late 20s, I would say at this point. He needs to be in a full season Pilot Challenge ride. He's had kind of hits and misses. I know he's had like some GS seasons, some TCR seasons. He's done some prototype racing, but he's never been like in the top prototype class, which is a shame. I think, he would have been the perfect Mazda prototype poster boy.
You and me both. Yeah.
I know I'm not the only person that thought that. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out in that manner. But, he's aggressive, and he pushes. He made some really decisive moves, and, really worked his way to the front. He even said, "Is like, I don't know if I'm going to be back in the car, so I'm gonna go for it." And between him and then Alec Udell, who was, trying to make a long fuel stint work, another one of these really talented, not quite in the right opportunity type things. there's some good people in that series, and some really good young drivers amidst the veteran Oberlins and, Trent Hinmans and drivers of that ilk.
And I hope the guy in the try, I didn't get to catch who the name was, but the guy who hooked the Mustang under the bridge post turn 8, I hope he had a talk to by, I don't know who, but some people, whether it's other drivers or somebody, that was a very dangerous move, is very NASCAR-esque.
We were trying to figure that out if he got a penalty in real time, because it was like it came back on and then just straight turned the Mustang guy and ricocheted. I mean, he almost took out like 3 other cars. I mean, it was a miracle it wasn't worse.
And that was, I know you mentioned it earlier, a couple heavy crashes. That was one of them. That was one of the hardest crashes we've seen in a while. For somebody to crash there in that style, it has to be almost almost a malicious move, or a very ill-fated move to hook a car like that. And
in general, I think the driving standards need to be looked at. I think there's a number of incidents that don't need to happen. These are teams that don't have spare cars. They are racing purely as customers. They are, if they tub a car, they have to get a new one. It's not as simple as you can just do a straight parts replacement when you go into straight concrete. I mean, that car's tubbed. One of the Audis that crashed is tubbed. The Camaro was tubbed. There was a Porsche, that the one in the kink, that actually had to get further cutting to get the driver out of it. So when it came back on the flatbed, it was actually way worse than how it looked. And I don't think there was any issues with the driver because we weren't informed of any update. But regardless, there's something about a 4-hour race that should breed patience, and it did the opposite. It created guys that drive like idiots for the most part for the first 2.5 to 3 hours, and then when they calmed down, it was fantastic. Which I think is peak pilot challenge in that regard, where you do get some of the best racing in the country, but it took a while to get there after a pretty mediocre first half. First two plus hours of a 4-hour race.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great series. And people are always bitching about, I want to see different types of cars. Well, that's one of the series where you see it,
My gosh, both classes, you had amazing comebacks. I mean, the Alfa Romeo took 2 front tires and went 6th to 1st in 10 minutes. I mean, granted, I know there's been some complaints or some questions in that car in the paddock about that car's pace, but you cannot begrudge the effort to do that amount of comeback in a short of time. To beat the 75 Hyundais coming from the Brian Hurtis stable.
Right.
No, it's just that all credit to them. I mean, they're such a quality team, but it's great that you do have that level of competition, that you have, a Herta that has the pedigree of championships, Indy 500s, F1 and IndyCar folks. And then the scrappy little Alpha that, couldn't stay alive for a 2-hour race for 2 years. And now it's won 3 races and it's in like 10-20 points within the championship. I mean, that's pretty remarkable right there.
Well, very good, Tony. Appreciate you taking time out. And once again, I appreciate the hospitality from Road America. They treat us very well up there. We certainly appreciate everything they do. And I think it's been a very, very good season for them. And even
too, they have an SRO race in a couple weeks. Our friends at the artist formerly known as Pro World Challenge, and I think there's one more event in September, but I'm blanking on what that is.
VSCDA vintage event in September. That's going to be a salute to lady racers, women racers. Lynn St. James is going to be one of the guests, as well as several others, notable drivers. And looking forward, I plan on attending that, being up there. Should be even quite a big, I'm hearing a pretty impressive car count. So if you haven't been up there, come on out to Road America in September for that. We'll have details in the comments here afterwards. So Tony, thanks again.
Yep.
Anything new coming up you want to announce, or?
Nothing too much. I'll be at the SRO weekend in a couple races, couple weeks, catching up with friends in that paddock. And I think that's my last scheduled event of the season. So.
All right. Thanks a lot. You've been listening to the Traction Reaction podcast. Steve Zautke along with Tony DiZinno. Thank you once again. We'll see you next time.